Greetings, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Plan B Success. We have Sigourney Belle today, who's known as a paradigm-shifting entrepreneur. She is from Australia, somewhere near Melbourne, and she's been working on revolutionizing the traditional frameworks of business, elevating consciousness and leadership, and helping people achieve success through that. So she's had quite a bit of a ride. There's the feminine frequency formula, a spiritual healing modality that she had started at a point in time. Her newest book, Wild Business, is something that's come out, and we'll talk about that from trying to find out what it's all about through Sigourney as well. So welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on today. Really excited to share with you.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about yourself in your own words.
Yeah, so I think you summarized it really beautifully, actually. And I guess where my interest lies and where my inspiration and passion lies is in really being at the forefront of cultural change and really noticing what's happening within the collective sphere of consciousness and really being at the edge of that and always bringing through something that's new and alive and current that's really going to support people to better their lives. And particularly at the moment, my focus is in business. And if we can see what's happening in the world at the moment, there has been massive changes within the economic system. And really what I believe is that we're at this point right now where people are being asked to choose their freedom and they're being asked to choose to do what they love. And I know you support a lot of people in making that move or feeling inspired to make that move. And, if we see like at the point at where we're at right now, I'm going to speak astrologically, actually, because that's something I'm really passionate about is astrology and tracking the changes that are happening in collective. So right now we're at the precipice of a massive change and at a junction point. And the last time we're at this point, we're about to see a huge shift into having 7 planets in Aquarius next month was when we transition from the Dark Ages into the Renaissance. And we're actually at another point where we're having a lot of these alignments come through for us to actually break through and from old paradigms and actually step into something entirely new, which is all coming. And I believe one of the areas we're going to see this in is business. And I really feel like we're being asked right now to really have the courage to step into leadership and doing what we love and earning money doing what we love as well. So that's kind of where my interest lies. I've got a extensive history in many different areas. I started off actually, whilst I wanted to always be a writer, I started off in the medical industry for 8 years, specializing in the field of neurology, and that kind of formed the basis of moving into holistic health and studying yoga therapy, Ayurveda, different forms of meditation, Buddhism, Tantra, and really studying these Eastern kind of philosophies, and then creating my own modality that actually supported people to experience health and wellness, but from a spiritual standpoint. So that was when I created the feminine frequency formula, which is really like a formula that helps people to unlock their aliveness in their body through their nervous system, and also channel their genius, what I call their genius imprint, which is really what you're here to do. Your this soul blueprint and imprint in this lifetime that you're here to embody. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Awesome. One of the things that I did read about you was that you're also known as a business oracle and seer. So what does that exactly mean?
Yeah, so I'll explain my journey a little bit. As a child, actually, I was always very, very sensitive, and I could always kind of see what's beyond the veil, I guess you could say. Some people say beyond the veil is like, they say there's this veil between the spiritual world and the physical world, and I could always see beyond that. And I did shut that down in my teenage years, and at about 23, I had this big awakening where I actually got really sick from stress of working in the medical system and overworking. And I had this kind of psychological, emotional, physical breakdown. And then what happened in that state where I just let go and I let go of everything is I actually had a massive awakening again. I started to open my visual capacity, and that's when I actually started to see things that were were coming in my path. And then eventually I circulated back around to working back in the medical field. And what would happen is I could see what was happening for people in their bodies beyond their physical symptoms. I could see what was happening in their energetic field. We have these different bodies, the physical, emotional, spiritual, mental planes. And I could see what was happening, and I could see the root of what was creating their physical health issue. And so that actually led me on to just supporting people more intuitively with their medical issues. And eventually what I actually noticed is what's wanting to come through beyond the physical symptoms is what's deeper than that is their suppression of like their spirit, or the suppression of like their vision. And when I would start to actually work with doing the healing work with them, actually what would happen is they'd start to open their vision, and they'd start to see things coming in for them, and like they'd start to see, like I guess like open this clairvoyant capacity. And so now what I kind of do, and when I'm working with people, is I'm actually helping them to access those like visual capacities to be able to see intuitively, or and be able to like channel their business. So, and that's something I can see for people. Like I often, when someone sitting in front of me, like I can see where they are, and I can see what their highest potential is, and I support them in moving from where they are to
Awesome.
yeah.
So did you travel quite a bit? Did you travel to the east in order to learn all these things?
I did, yeah. At 23, I was living in a Buddhist monastery in Nepal,
Hmm.
and then I traveled through India for a year after that. And I've been traveling really for the past 8 years. It's only really this year that I've decided to settle down and plan myself a little bit more, because of circumstances, obviously. But yeah, I spent a good chunk of my 20s traveling around and studying.
Awesome. So what was your those experiences like when you traveled to Nepal and India?
Yeah, it was quite interesting, because a lot of people feel quite. I guess I've had a lot of reports of people telling me, like when they traveled to India, they were quite shocked. It was quite a cultural kind of shock, but
Hmm.
that was not my experience at all. Actually, when I was living in Nepal and India and traveling through India, I actually felt very at home. And I never had that experience. Like, even though there was, mass poverty in some of the areas, and the the way that people live over there is extremely different, I felt at home. And I think I felt at home because of the level of devotion to that they have, to something greater, and that really resonating with me, and always being of resonance to me, this devotional service to something greater than yourself, and the rituals that go into their daily lives. And that really dropped me into this deep familiarity. I spent a lot of time in Varanasi,
Hmm.
and north, and also in Kerala, where I did a bit of study. And yeah, I loved it. I
Awesome.
loved it.
So when you reflect back on, before you started this entrepreneurial journey of yours, when you were actually working in the medical field, which I'm
Mm.
assuming is a couple of years, how was that experience? When you look back at the time that you actually, worked in the
Mm.
medical field, what did you feel about it? How was that time?
I never really understood why I was there at the time, because as a child, it was never something I saw for myself. And even when I was choosing what degree I would undertake, I didn't really see that. I didn't really have a sense that I'd be working in the medical system. But it's kind of something that just came quite spontaneously when I was choosing like what to study. And so I just went with that. And that's kind of how it always worked. I get something quite in the moment. I'm just like, I'm curious, I'm going to follow that. And when I was working in the medical system, I was extremely stressed. I got put in day one, into running a 35-bed ward on my own with no support. And I was quite young, and really, like, yeah, it was quite stressful. And I never really enjoyed it, actually. But the thing I did enjoy was at one point I specialized in neurology, and I specialized in supporting people to actually track the root cause of what their symptoms were. And I loved the investigation side of things, looking at MRIs and figuring out what was actually happening and where their disorder was coming from. And that's when I realized, oh, the thing that I love doing and what's unique to me is like I can really support someone to track the root cause of something. And actually, when I was working in the medical field, I was attracting clients that were very unusual. Like I was getting a high amount of clients with really complex cases where they had no, like, you know, doctors would look at all of their scans and be like, there's nothing here contributing to this, and put it down to something that was psychological. And I could see that these people's symptoms were very real. And that's kind of what led me to, and people would come into my spaces and actually open up a lot emotionally and start to feel relief in their symptoms. And that's what kind of started to get me intrigued into the fact that, oh, there's something far deeper here that's contributing to these issues. And that's what led me into, you know, studying more trauma-informed work and looking at like the spiritual side and how spiritual disconnection contributes to physical symptoms. Actually, I feel like everything can track back to that, is this disconnection from spirit. So that's kind of what drove me to studying all of these different modalities and then putting it together to create my own. And then realizing that, you know, when you connect someone back to the root source of spirit, it actually supports them in all areas of their life. It helps them to, you know, it helps them to feel more connected to their vision as well. It supports them in that way. So that's also what led me on to wanting to work with people's businesses, because I started to see people's highest potential. And I believe business is like, I personally love supporting people to create businesses that are based and founded upon that.
So when you talk about the Wild Grace movement, which is what you started, can you
Yes.
take us through an example of someone coming into that program and what exactly happens?
Yeah, so I've kind of blended a few different modalities together, and I teach different parts from different modalities. So we teach some work in core shamanism. We teach some foundations of Tantra, and basically what we take people through is a process that teaches them how to deepen their intuition, but not just from a psychological standpoint of, you know, teaching people meditation and practices to still their mind, really teaching them how to actually work through their body on a somatic level as well. Because I feel like there's been a lot of separation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people like a lot of practices in the East focus mainly on meditation, but actually don't practice so much or focus so much on the body. So it's really around integrating those parts and teaching people how to track the core truth that lies within them, which everyone has the capacity to do. So when someone comes in, we take them through a journey through the chakra system,
Mm-hmm.
which is an energetic map in the body.
Mm-hmm.
And at each level, we teach them different practices to help to open those centers. And yeah, so practice such as, like, I teach informed trauma release work, emotional catharsis work, embodied dance as a healing practice, more shamanic work, meditation practices, breath work,
Mm-hmm.
a whole range of different kind of embodiment practices. And then they can actually use those in their daily life to support them in opening their body, clearing their nervous system, and yeah, accessing deeper intuition.
Okay. So, when you talk about shamanism and tantra,
Mm.
there's a certain negative connotation associated with those particular practices. I get the meditation, the
Yes.
chakras, the yogic practices, and all of that. Me being from India, I kind of
Yes.
understand that really well. But tantra and shamanism has certain negative connotations. So, do you face that, or do you have to educate
Mm.
your clients before you even begin?
Definitely. And a lot of teachers would not actually blend those traditions together either.
Right, right.
You know, it's actually quite frowned upon to to blend them together. But I actually feel like you know, some of the leaders that are coming through, including myself, are here to actually show that there's no separation, and actually we can do things in the way that we're individually meant to,
Mm-hmm.
and to kind of almost like break free of any boxes and limitations. And um, in response to that, also it's important to respect the lineage as well and have education around that, just to note that. So there is a lot of stigma around some of those teachings for sure, and I think it's really important that you are able to teach them safely as well. I think there's a lot of people that, you know, can take some of these teachings and then run with them and be like, now I'm a shaman, you know, whereas it actually takes years and years and years of embodiment and to work with that. So yeah, by no means are we training people to become that, but we're teaching we're teaching practices from those lineages to support people in creating practices that are unique to themselves and finding out what works for them. Someone might not resonate with, you know, what we might teach some of these core shamanic principles and someone might not resonate with them at all. And really we're trying to teach people to hone into that skill and that inner compass to know what works for them, what doesn't, and to take the pieces and leave the rest. So which is kind of what I've done as well.
So what I find intriguing and curious is you're not just talking about dealing with people as just individuals and then the practices and how they benefit the people, but you're actually talking about how these practices can not just benefit them but their businesses as well. So I'm a little curious about that aspect of it in terms of how does that work and how do they measure progress?
Yeah, of course. So you know, when we open our bodies to be more receptive by like letting go of all of the areas of trauma that we're holding on to in our bodies, and when we actually let that go and we open to this allowing our life force to move through us, then we have more of an intuitive gauge, and that really supports business. Like my whole business has been built upon intuition. Actually, I had no business training at all. It's been really these practices that have supported me to drop into at every moment to know exactly what I need to do. You know, my practice in the morning is waking up and doing some kind of practice, whether it be a little bit of yoga or a little bit of movement based work or some breath work or some meditation, and then going, okay, what is the most aligned action I can take today? And just seeing what comes through me and then responding to that. So I find it to be a far more effective way of doing business. Sometimes we because it's precise. Intuition is precise. And that's not to say that you don't need the strategy and all of that as well to back it. But I think the foundations of having that intuitive knowing and then bringing in the strategy to support that's really important. And also the way that I've downloaded all of my business has been through downloading them visually, having these vision downloads of seeing it all playing out and then going, okay, you know, that's where and the way that I've been able to access my vision is through opening my whole nervous system up. So my life force is flowing. If we look at if we look at the energy centers, you know, they say that unless your lower energy centers and your body is open and your life force flowing through, then the vision becomes blocked. Our higher centers, our capacity to see and to sense what's happening more spiritually is blocked. So things start from the bottom and move up. And when we can clear our body and we can purify our body and allow our energy to flow naturally, then our vision awakens as well. And I think that's really important for business, or to build a business based upon what's really true for you.
You know, your first book, Leviathan, Sacred Scriptures, can you talk about that?
Yeah, Leviathan. So
Leviathan, okay.
I had no idea what that word meant before I actually, same thing, actually. I was sitting with someone one day and I was in a meditation and I just saw this gold font scribe in my mind saying Leviathan. I was like, what is Leviathan? And so I started doing research and I found out it was in the Gospels, and it was this mythological sea serpent that's spoken about a lot through different ancient texts. And I started researching more about it. And really what I started to realize was Leviathan was the energy that I was kind of almost, you could say, channeling or bringing through when I was writing. And the writing is really about the feminine path to creativity. And I feel like this serpent energy that I was like bringing through in my writing is that energy of deep creativity. That comes from is this like upwelling of energy that just like consumes us. I don't know if sometimes you felt so in your creative flow that you feel consumed. It's this energy of that just kind of overtakes us and just like wants to be moved through. And yeah, that's like, when I wrote that book, actually, it came on so suddenly. I ended up in hospital with pelvic pain.
Wow.
2 days later, I crashed my car. And then I was like, what's happening? All of these things are happening. And I sat down and I sat with myself and I'm like, what is this trying to show me? I always believe that when things are happening to us and not working, there's something that we're not listening to, or there's something we can't hear. And I just sat, and it was just like, you need to write a book. This next month is for you to write a book. So I just cleared my whole schedule and I just sat and I couldn't stop writing. I had to get my housemate. I paid my housemate to cook for me and to leave the house and get all my groceries because I couldn't do it. I was just in this creative flow of writing this book, and it just moved through me in a month. And
Wow.
it was quite an intense process, actually.
And I hear the book did really well as well.
It did. Yeah, it was an international bestseller in six countries. That was my first book, actually.
Awesome.
That I managed to publish. Yeah.
And then your current book, The Wild Business, right? Or Wild Business. What is that
Yes.
about?
So I guess it's about this principle that I was talking about before of like, how do we connect with the true essence of our business and the true essence of who we are, and create a business that's founded upon that. And the wild part correlates with, for me, it's like the wildness of nature. So for me, I follow the principles of nature. I'm deeply attuned to, and I follow the astrology cycles, and I'm always feeling like what's current and what's alive and what's wanting to move through me, as opposed to like, what do I like, what do I desire? It's like,
Right.
what's actually there, what's real, what's alive. And that's like, if we look at nature doesn't actually think. It just is, it just moves. It doesn't think, oh, I'm not going to destroy that city. It just does. It is this wild force of like untamable force. And I believe this is the energy that all of us have within us. And actually, when we unlock what is true for us and what really lights us up and what we're passionate about, we become this unstoppable energy. And really, while business is about unlocking that force and supporting us to create from that space of really untamed, ecstatic aliveness. And I feel like that's actually our natural state as well. If we look at children, like when we're born into this world, we don't have all of those filters of the external society that tell us what's right, what's wrong, like what we're meant to be doing. We actually just have this natural excitement for life and this alive nature. Children are so alive. And then that all comes, those filters come on, and then we like start to box ourselves into maybe working a particular job because we think like we think we have to, because we're conditioned from our parents, for example, to work hard, or all of these conditionings come in. We actually lose that connection. We forget who we are. And while business is really about rewilding back to that natural state and creating a business that really fuels us in that way.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I teach some of the practices I work with, and I kind of share my journey. And yeah.
So what is the Dark Empire part of your business?
So that's our brand and design work. So I have a team, and we actually so I actually call this a shamanic business model, where we basically support people to channel in this core essence of who they are and support them to understand what they're here to do and to create a business from that space. So we help people create businesses from the ground up. We support them in bringing through their branding. We support them in, we train in a couple of platforms where we actually can help support them in building out courses and sites. But it's through a really unique process where we're actually even getting them to do like rituals before they go to bed, and also work with potentially certain gentle plant medicines to actually really calm their nervous system so they actually can hear what's wanting to come through them. So we tap them into their unique essence, and we use things like astrology and you might have heard of like gene keys and some of these kind of unique frameworks, which actually kind of take them into what I was saying, that state before of this is who I am beyond the conditioning. So it gets them to really tap into that so that they can create something that's really powerfully aligned with who they are. And so, yeah, we support them both with guidance, with actually creating their branding for them, with actually setting up their site so that they can actually get a business set up that feels authentic to them.
So for someone who wants to like engage with you, like, they want to even at least check out if they're the right fit. And a lot of it sounds like there's an education element to it. Not a lot of people understand the shamanic side or the tantric side or the yoga and how all these things come together. So there's an education element before even they know what you have to offer and where can they get started with you. So how does that work? How do people reach you, and how do they learn before they know what they're signing up for?
Absolutely. So you can reach me by following me on Facebook, Sigourney Belle Weldon, or checking out my website, www.sigoureneybelle.com. And we have a application process where you fill out an application. We kind of tune into you, and then we have a call with you to just discuss whatever it is that's there for you and figure out if it is a fit. We also do have, free resources for people to access to. So you can follow our Instagram accounts where we have free ebooks and things where you can actually start to learn the content without necessarily hiring us, and just see if it is a fit. So that I can give you the links maybe to post.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. That'll be great.
And then it's easier than me saying it out, each of the accounts out, because there's a couple. And yeah, so for the shamanic business work, I have a really great ebook which takes people through the process that they can work with to tune into their business in the way that we teach. And for Wild Grace, there's a few different like resources and videos there you can watch to practice and get a feel for it. And I also have a free Facebook group where I also go live and sometimes do intuitive readings live for people, and bring through information as well. So that's Wild Business on Facebook.
Awesome. And then where do people find your books?
On Amazon. So I've got 2 currently out, Leviathan and Rapture, A Holy Awakening, and that one's about New Age relating. And Wild Business is launching in a week, so that will also be out online, and it's www.wildbusiness.com is where you can purchase it and check it out.
And then your website, your personal website, where people can find more information about you? Yes.
Yep, www.sigoureneybelle.com.
Awesome. Sigourney, this was great. This is a little different, and it's very intriguing to
I've heard that one before.
Different. Yes, for people, there's definitely an educational element to it. Even I'm intrigued because, like I said, I come from India. I understand the spirituality of India really, really well, having, been born there, bred up there, and I still practice several things here. But then some of the other stuff that you talked about, that's I'm pretty curious. I'm going to definitely check it out. And then for people too, I think this is a different angle totally to succeeding at business. And I think people will be intrigued to check it out, look at it, and definitely looking forward to your books as well. So thanks for joining us today. Thanks for sharing so much, and wish you the very best.
Pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely. Yeah.